All right, guys, I'm going to read a little excerpt from Jack London's What Life Means to Me. So there's a little history about Jack London. So I'm reading it from my school. Textbook, American Literature. So Jack London's essay, What Life Means to Me, was published in Cosmopolitan in March 1906 as part of a series in which the magazine invited American writers to contribute articles on this theme. London, 1876. He lived from 1876 to 1916. So he was about 40 years old. He died. So Jack London had been warned by the socialist and poet Edwin Markham that the Hearst Corporation, the powerful publisher that owned Cosmopolitan, would never print an attack on American capitalism. But the article appeared as London wrote it. London wryly remarked to Markham that special writers like myself are paid well for expanding their own untrammeled views, because these views will sell magazines. London's second wife, Charmian Kittredge London, later described this essay as his most impassioned committal of himself as a rebel toward the shames and uncleanness of the capitalist system. What Life Means to Me, written during the socialist phase of London's development, is one of his strongest expressions of the relation between the naturalistic elements of his fiction and his gritty origins and struggles for survival within urban poverty and exploitative class system. This is an excerpt from What Life Means to Me by Jack London. I was born in the working class. Early I discovered enthusiasm, ambition, and ideals, and to satisfy these became the problem of my child life. I discovered enthusiasm, ambition, and ideals. My environment was crude and rough and raw. I had no outlook, but an uplook rather. My place in society was at the bottom. Here life offered nothing but sordidness and wretchedness, both of the flesh and of the spirit. For here flesh and spirit were alike starved and tormented. Above me towered the colossal edifice of society, and to my mind the only way out was up. And to this edifice I early resolved to climb. Up above, men wore black clothes and boiled shirts, and women dressed in beautiful gowns. Also there were good things to eat, and there was plenty to eat, this much for the flesh. Then there were the things of the spirit. Up above me I knew were unselfishness of the spirit, clean and noble thinking, keen intellectual living. I knew all this because I read seaside library novels in which, with the exception of the villains and adventuresses, all men and women thought beautiful thoughts, spoke a beautiful tongue, and performed glorious deeds. In short, as I accepted the rising of the sun, I accepted that up above me was all that was fine and noble and gracious, all that gave decency and dignity to life, all that made life worth living, and that remunerated one for his travail and misery. All that made life worth living, and that remunerated one for his travail and misery. I was a sailor before the mast, a longshoreman, a roustabout. I worked in canneries and factories and laundries. I mowed lawns and cleaned carpets and washed windows, and I never got the full product of my toil. I looked at the daughter of the cannery owner in her carriage and knew that it was my muscle in part that helped drag along that carriage on its rubber tires. I looked at the son of the factory owner going to college and knew that it was my muscle that helped in part to pay for the wine and good fellowship he enjoyed. But I did not resent this. It was all in the game. They were the strong. Very well, I was strong. I would carve my way to a place amongst them and make money out of the muscles of other men. I was not afraid of work. I loved hard work. I would pitch in and work harder than ever and eventually become a pillar of society. And just then, as luck would have it, I found an employer that was of the same mind. I was willing to work, and he was more than willing that I should work. I thought I was learning a trade. In reality, I had displaced two men. I thought he was making an electrician out of me. As a matter of fact, he was making $50 per month out of me. The two men I had displaced had received $40 each per month. I was doing the work of both for $30 per month. His employer worked me nearly to death. A man may love oysters, but too many oysters will disincline him toward that particular diet. And so with me, too much work sickened me. I did not wish ever to see work again. I fled from work. I became a tramp, begging my way from door to door, wandering over the United States and sweating bloody sweats in slums and prisons. I had been born in the working class, and I was now at the age of 18 beneath the point at which I had started. I was down in the cellar of society, down in the subterranean depths of misery above which it is neither nice nor proper to speak. I was in the pit, the abyss, the human cesspool, and the shambles in the charnel house of our civilization. This is the part of the edifice of society that society chooses to ignore. Lack of space compels me here to ignore it, and I shall only say the things that I there saw gave me a terrible scare, and I shall say only that the things I there saw gave me a terrible scare. I was scared into thinking. I saw the naked simplicities of the complicated civilization in which I lived. Life was a matter of food and shelter. In order to get food and shelter, men sold things. The merchant sold shoes, the politician sold his manhood, and the representative of the people, with the exceptions of course, sold his trust, while nearly all sold their honor. Women, too, whether on the street or in the holy bond of wedlock, were prone to sell their flesh. All things were commodities. All people bought and sold. The one commodity that labor had to sell was muscle. The honor of labor had no price in the marketplace. Labor had muscle, and muscle alone to sell. But there was a difference, a vital difference. Shoes and trust and honor had a way of renewing themselves. They were imperishable stocks. Muscle, on the other hand, did not renew. As the shoe merchant sold shoes, he continued to replenish his stock, but there was no way of replenishing the laborer's stock of muscle. The more he sold of his muscle, the less of it remained to him. It was his one commodity, and each day his stock of it diminished. In the end, if he did not die before, he sold out and put up his shutters. He was a muscle bankrupt, and nothing remained to him but to go down into the cellar of society and perish miserably. I learned further that brain was likewise a commodity. It too was different from muscle. A brain seller was only at his prime when he was 50 or 60 years old, and his wares were fetching higher prices than ever. But a laborer was worked out or broken down at 45 or 50. I had been in the cellar of society, and I did not like the place as a habitation. The pipes and drains were unsanitary, and the air was bad to breathe. If I could not live on the parlor floor of society, I could at any rate have a tray at the attic. It was true the diet there was slim, but the air at least was pure. So I resolved to sell no more muscle and to become a vendor of brains. Then began a frantic pursuit of knowledge. I returned to California and opened the books, while thus equipping myself to become a brain merchant. It was inevitable that I should delve into sociology. There I found in a certain class of books, scientifically formulated, the simple sociological concepts I had already worked out for myself. Other and greater minds before I was born had worked out all that I had thought, and a vast deal more. I discovered that I was a socialist. The socialists were revolutionists inasmuch as they struggled to overthrow the society of the present, and out of the material to build the society of the future. I too was a socialist and a revolutionist. I joined the groups of working class and intellectual revolutionists, and for the first time came into intellectual living. Here I found keen flashing intellects and brilliant wits, for here I met strong and alert-brained, withal horny-handed, members of the working class, unfrocked preachers too wide in their Christianity for any congregation of mammon worshippers, professors broken on the will of universities, subservience to the ruling class and flung out because they were quick with knowledge which they strove to apply to the affairs of mankind. Here I found also warm faith in the human glowing idealism, sweetnesses of unselfishness, renunciation, and martyrdom, all the splendid, stinging things of the spirit. Here life was clean, noble, and alive. Here life rehabilitated itself, became wonderful and glorious, and I was glad to be alive. I was in touch with great souls who exalted flesh and spirit over dollars and cents, and to whom the thin wail of the starved slum child meant more than all the pomp and circumstance of commercial expansion and world empire. I was in touch with great souls who exalted flesh and spirit over dollars and cents, and to whom the thin wail of the starved slum child meant more than all the pomp and circumstance of commercial expansion and world empire. All about me were nobleness of purpose and heroism of effort, and my days and nights were sunshine and starshine, all fire and dew, with before my eyes, ever burning and blazing, the Holy Grail, Christ's own Grail, the warm, human, long-suffering, and maltreated, but to be rescued and saved at last. Interesting, Jack London.